My guests tonight are Ken Whitman and Larry Wilbur. They are from the Church of Scientology. We only met, moments ago, just before we went on the air. First of all, thank you very much for coming down here.
Well, thank you for having us.
Just, could you move yourselves into the microphones a little? Ken, I noticed, first of all, you were in clerical garb. You were attired in the clothing that one would expect to see a priest wearing, and you have a cross around your neck that doesn't look like the standard crucifix. It looks, if I might describe it for the audience, as a cross with a star in the middle of it, not the Star of David, but kind of protruding stars. Why are you attired that way?
Well, because I'm a minister of the Church of Scientology. I'm actually from Washington, D.C., and a registered minister in the District of Columbia. That means I can perform marriages and funerals and so forth. The symbol that I'm wearing is the 8-point symbol of Scientology.
The 8-point symbol of Scientology.
That's right. The cross stands for the body of man.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the actual derivation of the cross. And the other points, actually, if you count all the points, including the cross, you'll find out that there are 8,
mm-hmm.
right? And these stand for what we call the 8 parts of existence, or the 8 dynamics. And those would be starting with self, and then family, a group is number 3, mankind, then plants and animals, the physical universe, spiritual beings, and ending up with the 8th dynamic, or the infinite, or God.
Aha. What is Scientology?
Scientology is a religion. It's an applied religious philosophy. That's a key phrase. It is a religious philosophy that one can apply to daily life. There is nothing in Scientology that's academic. It's something that you read, or you have a datum, you look up a datum, and then you take it and you apply it to your life. And what it is a step-by-step road to greater spiritual awareness.
Is it more of a religion than a philosophy?
Well, it's both. As I say, it's a religious philosophy.
A religious philosophy.
Right, but there's more application in it than there is ritual.
Do Scientologists believe in God?
Yes, they do. That's what I say is the 8th dynamic. This is one of the realms of existence.
Do Scientologists believe in Jesus?
The Christian Scientologists do, the Jewish Scientologists don't.
In other words, Scientology as a body does not relate to Jesus as God or the Son of God.
That's right. Scientology is what we call a non-denominational religion. It's something that will augment a person's formal spiritual belief in terms of whether he's a Christian, whether he may be an atheist, or whether he's a Buddhist, or whatever he may be. Scientology does not infringe upon his spiritual belief as regards the 8th dynamic or God.
I see. How many Scientologists are there now in the world?
It's been estimated that we have about 15 million throughout the world. I tend to feel that that's a little bit high, and would stick with about 12 million. And
how long has Scientology as a religious philosophy been in existence?
Well, Scientology, you really have to look to Dianetics, which is the sub-study of Scientology, and actually originated in 1950.
So in 20 years, it's estimated that between 10 and 15 million people have indeed placed themselves in a position of considering themselves Scientologists.
That's right.
Let's begin at the beginning then, if we might. In 1950, a man named Ron Hubbard wrote a book called Dianetics, which was extremely popular at the time. I remembered reading it around 1958 or 59. Where was Ron Hubbard in 1950, and what was the book Dianetics all about?
Well, Ron Hubbard, our founder, was in the United States at the time. I'm not sure of the exact location.
What was he doing in 1950? I mean, was he a philosopher or a writer? Did he have a job?
Right, well, he's basically a philosopher.
Mm-hmm.
Many things, really. It's hard to pin Mr. Hubbard down. He's a philosopher, he's an explorer, has written some science fiction, has written movies, has written novels.
What movies has he written?
That I really couldn't tell you, because I don't know.
So in 1950, he wrote Dianetics.
That's right.
Briefly, for those of us who have not read Dianetics, what did the book concern itself with?
Well, the book, Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health, is basically a handbook to the mind.
Mm-hmm.
It explains exactly what the mind consists of, and basically gives you some technology to help one achieve release and eventual what we call the state of clear.
The state of clear. In Scientology, as I understand it, as you proceed with your pursuance of the faith, you do arrive at higher and higher and higher levels of being.
That's right.
Could you briefly run down those levels for us?
Certainly. First, let's say I was a parishioner and I came in off the street. The first thing that I would probably do is take what we call the communications course.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is not a level of awareness, but it's a practical application. This would be the first thing. Then I would have some Dianetic pastoral counseling.
Dianetic pastoral counseling.
That's right. This
Right.
is that Dianetics that we were talking about applied to the individual by a trained pastoral counselor.
Somebody who works with the student.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And Dianetics, the word itself means through mind. So here we take the student, or the what we call pre-clear, this is before the state of clear, up through the mind, and actually out the other end, if you want to call it that.
Out the other end.
Right. Actually, after Dianetics, a person is ready to confront himself as a spiritual being and ready to work on the spiritual aspect of his existence, having the mental part of his existence really basically handled after Dianetics. In terms of producing the state of clear, no, I would say that there is not an exact road, an exact map, an exact route. There has never been, and there has not been until now.
Okay, let's take one more break, then we'll come back for some summation. I'd like to talk with you a little about sex and dope before you leave. By the way, you said that both John Hammond and the Incredible String Band are into Scientology.
That's right. John is an OT6, and the Incredible String Band are all an OT3.
John Hammond is an OT6.
That's right.
Which is almost the highest level one can reach in Scientology.
That's right.
And each member of the Incredible String Band is OT3.
That's right.
One or two final questions.
Mm-hmm.
Dope. Scientology is very down on dope, as I understand. You have to be off of anything, including marijuana, for I think 4 or 5 weeks, even before your first session. Is that true?
That's right.
Why?
Because if you're really serious about getting spiritual gain, then you've got to stop taking the mirrored spiritual gain in the pill and in the pot. The idea is that you yourself have got to be in a frame of mind or actually straight so that you can view something yourself. If you've been on drugs recently, you're not quite there, right? There in present time, there to view things like the engram and so forth, and these things will not actually blow for you unless you are in a state where you can just look at them yourself.
You don't have to answer this next question. You don't have to answer any of these questions, but
fair
specifically this next question. Have you ever taken LSD?
Yes.
I assume prior to joining Scientology.
Definitely.
How old are you, by the way?
I'm 23.
And how long have you been in the church?
I've been in the church close to 3 years now.
So you were 20 years old when you began. Prior to beginning, how much acid had you dropped?
Oh, quite a bit.
More than 100 times?
Not that much.
More than 50 times?
That sounds good.
In any of those experiences, did you ever feel that you had become one with God? Or did you take it for haha and the colors and didn't...
No. I felt that I did gain some type of a spiritual awareness. But I'll tell you that the interesting thing about that is that, number one, I didn't know how I got that. And number two, when I saw something, I didn't quite know what it was. I mean, I knew it was something, and I knew that it had to do with something. You know, it might have had to do with God, it might have had to do with this or that, but I didn't quite know what it was. Right? And so here I was, stuck with all these things that persisted for an awfully long time, wondering, now, number one, how did I get there? How do I get back? You know, where is that place? And what exactly was it? You know, I mean, I want to call it something.
In other words, you were incapable of dealing with the information that was suddenly available to you.
Yeah. It very unpredictable source of information.
Is Scientology for you, has it had as strong an impact on your life as the hallucinogen?
Oh, I wouldn't even compare it.
In other words, the expansion of consciousness through Scientology, as far as you're concerned.
Well, when I was into drugs, I got off of drugs because I actually had a realization that what they were is it was sort of a canned type of trip, and it would only take you so far, and after that was it. So then I got into yoga, and I went on that for a long time until I again had a realization that this would only take me so far. I mean, I every day for well over a year. And in Scientology, I've never ever found that. It keeps expanding, it keeps going on. The realms of spiritual awareness are totally infinite, if you can have total infinity.
We're talking with Ken Whitman, and Larry Wilbur, both from the Church of Scientology. Larry, you are an OT3.
An OT1.
An OT1. Why are you different from me right now? What is the essential difference? I have never been through Scientology, so therefore I am in the pre-clear state. How are we different?
Well, I think I could answer that best by telling you how I am different from what I was before I became OT1.
Fine, please.
The big step on the road to OT1, of course, is clear.
Mm-hmm.
And at the level of clear, I was able to eliminate my reactive mind. Now, let me tell you what the reactive mind is. A common term used is the subconscious mind or the unconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
This is a mind that has certain experience in it, not always available to the analytical or conscious mind. And often those experiences are able to exercise a command value over our actions. We become upset in certain circumstances. Let's say a dog. We see a dog and we become nervous or upset, but we don't know exactly why. We react in some way. We find ourselves reactive behavior.
In other words, we're physically reacting to the unconscious hang-ups that we have about seeing the dog.
Yes.
Right.
And that is caused by the content of the reactive mind.
Right.
Okay. Now, clear is the level at which one has finally eliminated the reactive mind.
So therefore, a clear would be totally without fear or hang-ups of any kind.
Yes.
Are you totally without fear or hang-ups of any kind?
No. I'm totally without fear or hang-ups in relation to myself, how I feel about myself. I would be afraid, let me tell you, if I walked out on the street and someone came running at me with a knife, or if a car was about to hit me, I would...
In other words, external stimuli, but you personally have no fear of anything that you might do to injure yourself or to hurt yourself as a result of your own karma.
Exactly.
And a clear is... please.
Yeah, there's an interesting example. I used to be in music. I used to be a singer. And I would find that I pull in, well, I would call pull in, I'd get sore throats an awful lot. Now, this is something
I can
you
relate
can
to
understand,
immediately,
right?
Yes.
And I wondered why, because the most valuable tool of a singer and a radio announcer is your voice, and I always get these horrible sore throats. Well, that's the reactive mind. It's that thing that you want to protect your throat, because this is your instrument, this is how you make your money, and you're always getting these sore throats. All right, since being a clear, now you wouldn't do that. Obviously, that's self-destructive, right? It's not survival for self.
You were, of course, assuming that the sore throat would not be predicated on any kind of biological factor, that it's purely a spsychological state of affairs.
Well, some people can just walk into sick wards, like doctors and nurses, and they don't get sick.
Sure.
Other people will walk in and they'll get sick. So basically, this is something that would, you'd have to be predisposed to.
How long has it been since you've had a sore throat?
Quite a while.
I noticed that you smoke cigarettes.
Yes, I do smoke cigarettes.
But most of the people I know who smoke cigarettes don't do it out of pure pleasure. They do it because they're hung up on something else. Would that not in some way be related or correlated to a psychological hang-up?
That's funny, because actually I do it out of pure pleasure. I had quit smoking and only started after I went clear, because I said to myself, you know, this is, I really want to have a cigarette. That would be a lot of fun.
Scientology people come under criticism on a couple of different levels, and either of you can respond to these levels that one hears. A, people say it costs much too much money to go through the entire course. First, would you tell us approximately how much money it does cost, and respond to that as a complaint that's waved at Scientology?
All right, well, first I would have to find out who said that. I know that it's not a question of people saying that, because we have very, very few complaints about cost as such. Cost is really not a factor. Spiritual gain cannot be measured in the same terms as a car can be measured, let's say. Supposing I paid $5,000 and I went clear or something, not knowing what that was. It might seem very expensive to him. It's really relative.
I understand the point you're making. But I ask again, how much does it cost?
All right, well, if you came in off the street, the first thing that you would do is take the communications course, which costs $15.
Right.
One man did have an inquiry, this one-man inquiry, on the subject of our church and our faith. It was an extremely biased inquiry, and he's now being sued by the church, I'm happy to say. And they did publish certain recommendations, and on the strength of those recommendations,
I see.
the act went into effect.
Larry, let's get into more of the faith itself rather than the peripheral elements around it. I attended an introductory Scientology discourse because I'm always interested in alternatives, and that was one that I wanted to explore. And it was indeed fascinating. It was a 2-hour lecture that I'm sure you're familiar with. And some of it pleased me and some of it disturbed me, but that's neither here nor there. One of the things that I found interesting, after the lecture had ended, at the particular office that I attended the lecture, I went off alone with the lecturer for a while. We began to talk less formally, and he confided in me that Mr. Hubbard had been to Venus. And I was concerned about that. Not that I have any objection to him going anywhere he wants. Why did he tell me that? Is that true? Or do you believe it to be true?
No, I don't. He might have been making reference to a statement which was born out of the infamous Melbourne inquiry. The statement made by the one-man board, Q.C. Anderson. Mr. Anderson did say that Mr. Hubbard had been to heaven and Venus and a few other places. Actually, Mr. Anderson had confused an allegorical reference.
What was the allegorical reference?
Well, I really don't know what the allegorical reference was. I do know, however, that Mr. Hubbard did not make that statement.
I will accept, of course, the possibility that he did not physically go to Venus, but what I'm more concerned about is the possibility that he does, on a spiritual or a psychic or a level of that kind, have interplanetary interaction. Am I on the right trail, or is that line of reasoning totally divorced from the Church?
Well, in terms of what you might call astral travel...
Astral travel, yes.
There have been these types of experiences reported for years. I wouldn't say it's anything new. It is possible for people on higher spiritual awareness levels to have these subjective experiences.
Oh, I know
wouldn't
that.
say it wasn't possible. So,
but what I'm asking you to tell me is whether or not Mr. Hubbard has claimed to have done it. I mean, we all acknowledge the possibility that people on an astral level do those things. I'm curious as to whether or not he has been one of them.
if he has not claimed so.
I see. Do you know of any Scientology people personally who do travel on an astral projection plane?
No, I don't.
You don't. And you've never had that experience either.
And now you get into in terms of semantics here, and is a question of, do I believe that I am my body, or do I believe that I'm a spiritual being?
Let me ask you if you believe that you have ever spiritually left the physical body which you now occupy.
Yes.
Could you tell us a bit about that?
It's really very simple.
Please.
When people die, they, what we call exteriorize. They leave the body.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this may or may not accompany an awareness of such a thing, but the spirit, and this is part of the belief of the church, the spirit being an immortal spirit leaves the body. Most people think that the body dies and they associate themselves with the body, and
Right.
the soul goes off to heaven. All right? Well, if you realize that you are actually the soul, then it's in question of you going off someplace. Now, as I say, that may or may not accompany an awareness. Certainly, Zen Buddhists have talked about this. Buddha has talked about it.
Surely. But taking it out of the death experience, talking about it in conjunction with life.
Well, this is something that was known as nirvana.
Yes, it is. And it just fascinates me that Scientologists relate to... See, perhaps a personal prejudice is coming out here. This is KPPC, Full Power Stereo, Pasadena. The personal prejudice, one of the... I don't call it objections, because I think everybody's trip is valid for everyone who's on the path, and I think that all paths take us to the same place, ultimately. But the reason that Scientology did not personally work for me, or I couldn't get that involved in it, was because of the absence of magic. It became extremely technical and pragmatic, which I understand it to be the appeal to many people. I prefer a little bit more of the magic in all of my life experiences. But of late, as I've been talking to what I refer to as the new breed of Scientologists, they no longer get uptight about discussing nirvana and astral projection and space travel and stuff like that, which I can relate to. That's why this line of conversation interests me more than... See, the other thing was very close, as far as I was concerned, to psychotherapy.
Right.
What is the difference between Scientology and psychotherapy in this discussion?
Well, there's quite a difference. Let me preface my remarks on that by saying that it would be easier for me as a minister to relate to what you're saying, because I've studied yoga, and I've studied Zen and Buddhism and so forth. So I do understand this is where actually Scientology has its heritage, is in Buddhism. It's if it does have a close spiritual heritage with anything, this is where it comes from, Buddhism.
When you're having these counseling sessions prior to people becoming clear, what do you call those again?
Auditing sessions.
Auditing sessions.
Right, auditing meaning to listen.
To listen. What is the difference between an auditor and a prospective clear? What is the difference between that and a therapist and a subject?
Well, psychotherapy, compared with Scientology, I wouldn't even want to compare it, really. Let me start out with psychotherapy. It's like based upon totally different tenets. Number one, it's non-religious. Number two, the psychotherapist does not work with the individual as a spiritual being, but he works as some sort of a something that the psychotherapist doesn't quite understand, but knows that he has a sort of a brain or a mind or something, and knows that somewhere down there there's some sexual significance that may have triggered off something. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the little fellow saw mommy undressed and it ruined his life, and this is the thing right down there that made him into what he is today, And when they discover that, then that's what he says, well, now you know what your basic trauma is, and now you can live with it.
Okay, using that as the example of a Freudian approach to a problem, show us now how the Scientologist auditor would respond if the young man in these auditing sessions revealed in the discussion that indeed he had a sexual hang-up that he believed had something to do with an association with something in childhood. Where would be the difference in how you would handle that?
All right, well, let's say that all right, let's take your example. What it would probably be connected with would be some type of basically a moment of pain and unconsciousness. This could be an operation. This could be a car accident.
But what if it was? What if it was indeed seeing somebody in a sexual situation? That
Well, that's Freud's fantasy. Seeing someone nude has never aberrated anyone, really. It's not the type of thing that is the key to somebody's life. The sexual key to people's existence doesn't work. It's just...
In other words, you completely deny the possibility that a child in a formative stage, upon observing a sexual act that he could not accept or relate to or understand, that in and of itself could not have created the psychological problem, that the Scientologists would believe it is something else other than the sexual thing.
Oh, all right. Well, let me tell you this. First of all, it doesn't matter what the minister believes, because this doesn't enter into it. In psychotherapy, it's a question of the psychotherapist selecting what he considers to be the problem, not the patient. The patient doesn't say, hey, look, doc, this is what it is, this is it.
But you just a moment or two ago dismissed the possibility that indeed it could have been that. You said
Only as the psychotherapist's evaluation, as a standard textbook type of thing, that this is what the psychotherapist is looking for. This is where he's directing the patient. This is where he's pushing the person. And the psychotherapist is the one that will evaluate what the basic trauma is. It won't be the patient.
And in the Scientologist situation, the auditor would send it back to the subject and allow him to arrive at his own personal discovery without commenting.
Well, as you have said it now, see, we don't even go looking for that type of thing, actually. What I was trying to do is relate what the Scientology minister would be looking for would be a moment of pain and unconsciousness. This is the real aberrative key to the mind.
What is a pain in unconsciousness? How does that differ from an aberration?
Well, this is something that we call an engram. And
Spell
this
that.
E-N-G-R-A-M.
Engram.
Right.
Right.
And that, strictly speaking, is what we call a mental image picture of a moment of pain and unconsciousness.
A picture.
That's right. Right, a picture in your mind.
You see something, you snap it, and it's there, and that's the cause of the hang-up. That's the engram.
That's right.
And in the
that's what's keeping it in place. See, let's take a football player. In college, he had a football injury to his knee, all right? Well, when he had that injury, he took a picture as a being of that moment of pain and unconsciousness. 40 years later, he's walking down the street, and he looks in a show window, and he sees the TV shop, and there's a football game on, and they take a close-up, and the guy falls down on the ground, hits his knee, and all of a sudden this fellow who's looking in the window gets a pain in his knee. What's that? That is a restimulation.
Got it.
Right, of that engram.
In attempting a summation, tell me if I have this right. Human beings, as they walk through life, occasionally expose themselves to mental images which create problems in their head, known as engrams. These problems register in the mind in the form of pictures, and throughout life, various things trigger off this reaction, this visual reaction in their head, which is the cause of all of their difficulties. By attending the Scientology sessions on an auditing level, the Scientologist listens, allows the subject to reveal to himself his own engrams, with the ultimate hope being to arrive at a state of clear being the removal of the engrams, and then to go on beyond that onto higher spiritual levels.
Basically, there are a couple of points there that I'd like to correct.
Please.
Just removing engrams will not make it clear. This is the first level. Clear, as I said, had to go up through all the different Scientology levels, communication problems and so forth. This is just talking about the mind. This is strictly Dianetics
I
right
see.
now.
Okay, let's stop there for a moment.
Good.
When we come back, we will find out what will replace the engrams. Is there anything else you wanted to mention?
Just that KPPC is my favorite station. Listen to it all the time.
I can't blame anyone for that.
And very happy that you had us on here and we could talk a little bit about our religion.
I'm delighted you came by and appreciate your time. We were speaking with Ken Whitman and Larry Wilbur, both from the Church of Scientology. If that sounds to you like the kind of alternative you would like to pursue, I wish you well and Godspeed.